Hey guys, tonight we drift into one of those evenings that history could never quite forget, even though the smoke has long since cleared. You're stepping into London, September 1st, 1666, the night before the fire that would change the city forever. And let me warn you right away, you probably won't survive this one either, not because of collapsing roofs or choking smoke, but because the slow, heavy rhythm of the story is going to press down on your eyelids until they droop like the shutters of a weary tavern. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop a comment telling me where you are and what time it is for you right now. I love knowing who's lying in bed in Los Angeles while someone else is curled up on a couch in Dublin. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The city of London rests under a sky peppered with faint stars. The Thames glimmers in the dark, black water reflecting the lantern lights of ships moored along its banks. Timbered houses press close together, their crooked beams leaning in as though gossiping in their sleep. Chimneys cough occasional puffs of smoke, the last sighs of cooking fires banked low. It seems peaceful, but the peace is deceptive, because this city, packed with wood and pitch and narrow lanes, is tinder waiting for a match. You walk the lanes of Pudding Lane, where the smell of flour, yeast, and smoke lingers in the air. Thomas Farriner's bakery is quiet, shutters drawn, but embers still glow in the ovens, faint and forgotten. A cat darts across the cobblestones, tail high, vanishing into shadows. The silence is heavy here, and you can almost hear the faint crackle that tomorrow will roar. Historians still argue whether Farriner truly left his oven unchecked, or whether the story grew exaggerated later to give the disaster a convenient beginning. Either way, this is where the spark will be remembered as born. The streets around you are narrow, dark, claustrophobic. Overhead, upper stories lean out so far they nearly touch, timber beams creaking in the wind. Windows are shuttered, though faint candlelight flickers behind some, where families murmur late prayers or argue in whispers. The plague had only just loosened its grip the year before. Londoners still carry that dread in their bones, a reminder that disaster lingers close. Yet tonight, the danger isn't sickness but fire, and no one knows it yet. A quirky tidbit: fire was so common in 17th century London that households kept leather buckets and long poles with hooks to tear down burning thatch. It was expected, almost ordinary. But no one imagined a fire so great that even these tools would look laughably small. Tonight, those buckets hang neatly on pegs, waiting uselessly for a blaze they cannot stop. You wander past taverns, their doors locked, but still carrying the smell of ale and pipe smoke. Outside one, a drunkard snores, slumped against the wall, his empty mug beside him. Farther on, the bells of St. Magnus toll faintly, marking the hour. The sound rolls through the crooked lanes like a heartbeat, steady, indifferent. Beyond, the silhouette of St. Paul's Cathedral rises, its stone bulk comforting, as though it could never fall. Yet even that sanctuary will not be spared. The air tonight is warm, unseasonably so, the kind of lingering summer heat that clings to timber and straw. A horse stamps its hoof restlessly in a stable, chains clinking. Dogs bark at shadows. Somewhere, a child cries out from a dream, hushed quickly by a tired mother. All of it is ordinary, almost cozy, and yet you can feel something else. The night doesn't quite settle. It listens. It waits. Historians debate whether omens were seen, whether Londoners muttered that the air smelled strange, or that the sky glowed faintly with red haze before dawn. Some records hint at premonitions. Others dismiss them as superstitions sewn in afterward. But as you breathe the smoky air and watch the faint orange glow of ovens still cooling, you can't help but feel it too. This is a city balanced on the edge of flame. You pause at the Thames, leaning against the railing, watching barges rock gently in the dark water. The tide slaps against stone steps, rhythmic, soothing, unaware of what the morning will bring. Across the river, Southwark glimmers faintly, its taverns and theaters dimming into slumber. Life is ordinary, steady, fragile, and above it all, a faint breeze carries the smell of ash, not sharp enough to alarm, just enough to seed unease. London sleeps, its citizens wrapped in uneasy dreams. Some dream of plague masks and shallow graves. Some dream of fortunes to be made in the morning market. All are blind to what dawn will carry. And you stand there, listening, feeling the tinderbox hum beneath your feet. The night presses forward. The city exhales. And tomorrow, history will strike a match. The bells have stopped ringing now, leaving the streets of London in a deeper hush. You drift along alleys so narrow you can touch both sides if you stretch out your arms. The timbers above creak, and the faint smell of soot lingers, never entirely gone in a city built of wood and lit by flame. Inside the houses, families are settling into sleep, shutters drawn, candles snuffed. Yet behind those doors, the rhythm of life goes on. Small gestures that will never know they're the last before fire changes everything. In one cottage, a woman kneels beside her bed, whispering prayers in a voice worn thin by years of plague and poverty. She crosses herself quickly, glancing at her children tangled in blankets, their faces soft and careless. She doesn't know that tomorrow, she'll be running barefoot through streets lit brighter than day, clutching those same children to her chest. For her, tonight is just another Sabbath Eve, heavy with routine. Farther down, in the bakery itself, embers glow faintly in the ovens. A careless detail, a forgetful moment. The bakery's family sleeps upstairs, unaware that below them, coals cling stubbornly to life, sparks curled inside like secrets. Historians still argue whether it was negligence, bad luck, or a combination of both. Did the baker truly leave the oven unquenched? Or was the spark already inevitable, waiting only for an excuse? Whatever the truth, the air here is thicker, warmer, like a room already holding its breath. Quirky tidbit: London had watchmen who patrolled the streets at night, carrying lanterns and rattles to ward off thieves. They also doubled as the city's first line of fire defense, their job to spot smoke or flame. But many of them were elderly, half-deaf, or bribed into looking the other way. Tonight, you pass one slumped against a wall, his lantern dim, his chin resting on his chest. The city relies on him, but his dreams are deeper than his vigilance. You step into a tavern yard, where a group of late drinkers lingers, their voices slurred, songs trailing off into mumbles. One man insists the air feels strange, that it smells of burning even though no fire is near. His companions laugh, swat him on the back, and shuffle off toward their homes. The joke dissolves, leaving only silence, and the faintest ember drifting unseen. The night wears on. In the wealthier parts of the city, merchants snuff out candles in paneled rooms, their ledgers tucked neatly away. They dream of markets and ships, of fortunes tied to spice and cloth. For them, fire is a risk covered by insurance, a problem for poorer neighbors. They don't yet know that flames leap boundaries without hesitation, that wealth burns as easily as straw. In a cramped garret, an apprentice scratches notes into a cheap booklet, practicing letters by candlelight. He blinks against the smoke, sighs, and sets the quill down. Tomorrow morning, he plans to show his master his progress. He'll never get the chance. The candle sputters, flares, and dies, leaving him in darkness that is safer than light. You slip back into the streets. The air is warmer now, unnervingly so. The faint glow in the bakery flickers stronger, though shutters hide it from view. A breeze nudges sparks forward, coaxing them into life. But the city remains unaware, oblivious in its sleep. London breathes shallow tonight, every house and alley a lung filled with kindling. Historians debate whether London was doomed from the start. The city had survived fires before, but its design was a trap. Too many houses crammed too close, too much timber soaked in pitch, too many narrow lanes for fire to escape. Was the Great Fire destiny, or could it have been prevented? You walk these streets and feel how fragile it all is, how one spark could undo centuries in a matter of hours. You pass St. Paul's again, its shadow vast against the stars. The stone towers rise solid, unshakable, or so they seem. Inside, priceless manuscripts and records sleep in wooden chests, stacked high in timber lofts. Scholars will later weep for what is lost here, but tonight, the cathedral is just another dreamer in a city about to wake in flames. Dogs howl again, sharper this time, as if they sense it first. A baby's cry carries down the lane, muffled quickly, but the sound lingers in your ears. The night is restless. It listens, it waits. And behind the bakery shutters, sparks stir, glowing brighter, ready to breathe. The city sleeps, unaware it is already burning. The clock edges toward 2 in the morning, and London's breath grows heavier, thick with a warmth that doesn't belong to the season. You walk through Pudding Lane again, and this time the silence feels taut, stretched like a rope about to snap. Behind the bakery shutters, sparks lick upward, faint at first, just orange tongues tracing the wood. A mouse scurries across the floor, whiskers twitching, then bolts as if it knows something greater is waking. The embers finally leap, finding air, finding fuel. What was once routine heat becomes the city's undoing. At first, it's subtle, a flicker against a window pane, a glow too faint to stir the families asleep upstairs. But flame moves like thought, quick, insistent, relentless. It bites at timber beams, curls around baskets of flour, and crackles with sudden hunger. The bakery is alive with fire now, its heart beating faster with each breath of air. Historians still argue whether it began with a single oven ember or whether the sparks had been smoldering all along, hidden in the thatch and straw. The debate matters little as you stand here, watching the walls themselves light their own funeral candles. A watchman rounds the corner, lantern swinging low. He stops, blinking at the glow, rubbing his eyes as though sleep still clings. He mutters under his breath, debating whether it's worth the trouble to raise an alarm. Fires are common. After all, a routine hazard in a city made of wood. But this one grows faster than his doubt. The crackle swells into a roar. He rattles his clapper finally, too late for anything but panic. Quirky tidbit. Londoners actually kept leather buckets and fire hooks in their homes, tools meant for tearing down burning walls before the flames could spread. But few used them quickly or decisively. Fear made people hesitate, and hesitation was fire's best ally. Tonight, neighbors peer from their windows, watching the bakery burn as though it's theater. Some shout, some cross themselves, but most simply stand frozen. Within minutes, Pudding Lane is ablaze. Flames leap from roof to roof, drawn by the wind. Sparks scatter like seeds, planting fire in thatch and timber farther down. Smoke thickens, pressing against the sky, blotting out the stars. The air tastes of ash and heat, scraping your throat raw. You stumble backward as the fire bellows, an animal freed, devouring everything in sight. In the cramped houses nearby, families scramble awake. Mothers grab children, fathers wrestle with buckets, water sloshing uselessly against walls already glowing. A boy cries for his dog, the animal darting madly between shadows. A woman throws her arms around a chest of linens, then drops it when sparks lick her sleeves. The streets fill with shouts, with the slam of doors, with the chaos of too many lives colliding in panic. You make your way up Fish Street Hill, the slope carrying you toward the Thames. From here, you see the scale more clearly. What was one house is now dozens. Roofs collapse inward with muffled groans. Chimneys topple, sparks spiraling skyward like fireworks. And the wind, cruel, merciless, fans every ember into flame. London is not fighting the fire. London is feeding it. Historians debate whether the city's leaders acted quickly enough. The Lord Mayor, Sir Thomas Bloodworth, famously dismissed the early panic. A woman might piss it out, he reportedly said, brushing aside warnings. Was it arrogance, fatigue, or simple disbelief? Whatever the reason, the hesitation sealed the city's fate. By the time orders came to pull down houses, the fire had already outrun men's courage. A church bell tolls, not for prayer, but for alarm. Its sound trembles through the smoke, a hollow cry swallowed by the roar of flames. People stagger toward the river, dragging carts piled with whatever they could seize. Blankets, pots, children clinging to mothers' skirts. The Thames itself glows, reflecting fire as though it too is burning. Boats crowd the banks, oars clattering, captains shouting, each vessel a fragile ark for terrified families. Quirky fact, some Londoners buried their valuables in gardens, hoping to dig them out after the fire passed. Silverware, ledgers, even barrels of ale disappeared into earth that night. Few would ever see them again. As you wander through the smoke, you catch sight of a man on his knees, clawing at the soil with bare hands, desperate to hide a chest before the flames reach his door. His wife tugs his arm, pleading to leave, but he stays a moment longer, half mad with hope that treasure can outlast fire. The city's soundscape is changing now. Cries of alarm become screams. The crackle of fire becomes a roar. Horses bolt, their hooves pounding against cobblestones slick with spilled water and ash. Sparks sting your face, sharp as needles. Everywhere you look, orange replaces black, light replaces dark, heat replaces air. You realize that tonight is no longer an ordinary night in London. The great fire has begun, and nothing will stop it. The city's wooden heart is exposed, and it beats in flame. By dawn, the fire is no longer a street problem. It is a city problem. The sun rises pale and thin through the smoke, barely cutting through the haze. From the riverbank, you look back and see a skyline of flame. Towers, steeples, homes, all of it wrapped in orange and black. The fire moves like a tide, sweeping across London with the wind. And you, walking among the crowds, feel the ground itself radiating heat, the cobblestones warm under your feet. The Thames is choked with boats now, overloaded with families clutching what they could carry. Pots, clothing, cages with birds, mattresses tied with rope. A man steers a barge piled with barrels, his wife clutching a crying baby, while his son rows frantically at the other end. The water is their only escape, but even here safety is not certain. Sparks ride the wind, falling on sails, on cloaks, on hair. Women beat at the flames with shawls while men curse the fire as though it can be reasoned with. Behind you, buildings collapse in chain reactions. Timber groans, iron squeals, and walls crash into streets, sending up gouts of ash and sparks. The sound is endless, a rhythm of destruction that drowns out thought. People scatter in waves, some carrying bundles on their backs, others dragging livestock. Cows bellow, dogs yelp, cats claw frantically at shoulders. The city is a living thing in flight, its heartbeat chaos. Quirky tidbit: Samuel Pepys, the famous diarist, recorded stuffing his own wine and cheese into a pit to save them from the fire. Imagine that, centuries later, historians still talk about a man's cheese buried under London's soil. But as strange as it sounds, it shows how panic shrinks thought. When faced with disaster, we clutch at small comforts as if they can anchor us. You see echoes of that everywhere. Men clutching pocket watches, women clutching candlesticks, children clutching dolls scorched by sparks. Historians still argue whether fire breaks, tearing down houses to block the flames, could have stopped the fire if ordered sooner. By this morning, it hardly matters. The flames have outrun every attempt at control. Fire hooks tear down walls, buckets slosh water, but it's like trying to empty the sea with a spoon. The fire leaps gaps, shrugs off water, roars higher with every gust. You push through smoky lanes, coughing, eyes stinging. Ash falls like snow, coating shoulders and hair, turning the city gray beneath its flames. Ahead, you see St. Paul's Cathedral, its stone walls rising like a fortress above the city. People whisper that the great church cannot burn, that God's house will stand even as London falls. But you notice the timbers of its scaffolding, dry from weeks of summer sun, already catching sparks. Workers scramble, beating at the fire, but the glow is spreading too fast. In the markets, merchants scream as stalls collapse. Spices ignite with sharp bursts, colors burning into the smoke. Barrels of oil explode in sudden fireballs. The heat pushes you back, driving people into alleys where they stumble over debris. The air tastes of pepper, tar, and sulfur all at once. The city's wealth, its goods, its trade, is fueling its own destruction. A preacher shouts from a corner, waving a Bible, declaring the fire is God's punishment. People listen with hollow eyes, some nodding, others cursing him for wasting words when water is needed. Panic has no patience for sermons, but the fire does not discriminate. Pious or not, rich or poor, timber burns the same. By mid-morning, rooftops sag like melting wax. You pass a line of men tearing down houses with ropes, their faces streaked black with soot. They grunt and shout, pulling timbers free, but the fire outruns them. The wind shifts, embers land on their own homes behind them, and they drop their tools to run. The fire is a trickster, always ahead, always laughing. Quirky fact: some Londoners thought gunpowder could save them, blowing up houses to stop the spread. It worked in places, creating space the fire couldn't jump. But gunpowder itself was dangerous, setting off more sparks, shaking the air with its thunder. Imagine fighting fire with fire, desperate enough to gamble with explosions in a city already burning. By the time noon presses its pale light through the smoke, you are exhausted, lungs raw. But the fire is stronger than ever. Whole parishes are gone, nothing but smoldering frames and glowing ash. Families wander in dazed silence, clutching each other, faces streaked with soot and tears. You hear the river, crowded with boats groaning under weight, and beyond it fields already filling with refugees. London is spilling out of itself, bleeding people into the countryside. The fire is not done. The wind howls, feeding it. The city cracks and crashes under its weight. And you, standing in the middle of the chaos, realize that London is already half gone, with the rest trembling on the edge of flame. The day stretches on, and the fire becomes a monster with no edges, no mercy. By evening, half the city is glowing embers, and the other half is trembling at its border. You walk through streets that no longer exist, just paths of ash where houses once stood. The heat is so intense you can feel it even when the flames are far ahead, as though the fire has a breath that reaches across the city to warn you it's still coming. Crowds press toward the river and the open fields beyond the walls. Thousands of people carry their lives in their arms, bundles of clothes, pots and pans, icons, even animals dragged on ropes. The air is thick with smoke and cries. A woman collapses beside you, clutching a chest too heavy to carry. She opens it, spilling silver candlesticks into the street, gleaming against the ash. She sobs, leaves them, and stumbles onward. Wealth means nothing when the city itself is burning. Near the Thames, boats tilt dangerously under the weight of desperate passengers. Men shout, shoving, trying to load more even as the river threatens to swallow them. The water reflects the fire in shimmering waves, as if London itself is burning twice, once on land, once on water. The smoke hangs so thick it turns day into dusk, and the sun glows like a red coin through the haze. Quirky tidbit. Some people roasted meat in the streets as the fire passed, setting skewers over glowing embers where houses had stood hours before. It sounds absurd, turning disaster into a makeshift meal, but it shows the strange ways humans adapt, finding survival even in ruin. You picture it now, a man turning a spit of meat, the flames of his lost home providing the heat. Historians still argue how many truly died. Official records claimed only a handful, but the truth is likely far greater. People without records, without homes, swallowed by the flames with no one to count them. The silence of the numbers doesn't match the screams you hear now, the chaos in the streets, the endless roll of collapse echoing like thunder. You reach St. Paul's again just as its great timbers finally ignite. The roof glows, then collapses inward with a roar that shakes the ground. The people watching cry out, some crossing themselves, some falling to their knees. The great cathedral, thought to be indestructible, becomes a torch, its spire collapsing in a spray of sparks that rain across the city. It is the symbol of London's soul, and tonight it burns like everything else. The fire rages on for days, but tonight, the first night, sets its course. You wander through the fields outside the walls, where families huddle on the grass, faces lit by the glow of their burning city. Children cry for homes already gone. Mothers wrap them tighter, whispering promises they cannot keep. Men sit in silence, staring at the skyline of fire as if trying to carve it into memory. The wind shifts, and the flames leap higher, roaring with renewed hunger. You can feel the heat even here, far from the worst of it, as if the fire itself wants to reach you. People whisper prayers, curses, bargains with God. Some say it is judgment for sin, others say it is just fate. You sit among them, feeling the weight of history pressing down, knowing that this night will echo for centuries. By midnight, the fire has carved itself into the bones of London. The city sleeps no more. It trembles, burns, collapses. And yet, in the silence between crashes, you can almost hear something else, the stubborn heartbeat of survival. People cling to each other, to the fields, to the river. They have lost homes, shops, churches, lives, but they have not lost themselves. And so you lie back in the grass, the glow of the fire painting the sky above you. The crackle of flames is endless, the heat unrelenting, but your eyes grow heavy. You close them, knowing that tomorrow, the city will still burn, But someday it will rise again. London will not die here. It will stumble, scar, rebuild. And the fire, though vast, will become memory, folded into the whispers of history. The lamps dim, the flames fade, the story folds itself closed. Sweet dreams.